Brazil's Supreme Federal Court has upheld the decision to annul all the convictions against former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva and to restore his political rights. A COVID-19 double mutant variant has been identified in 10 states in India thus far, authorities from the Health Ministry told local media on Thursday. The United Nations and its aid partners have seen no proof of a declared withdrawal of Eritrean troops from Ethiopia's Tigray region, according to the world body's top humanitarian official, who also warned the situation in the embattled region has deteriorated. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. The plenary of Brazil's Supreme Federal Court formed a majority to uphold the ruling to annul all the convictions against former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva in the Lava Jato operation this Thursday. Thus, Lula maintained his political rights and the trial continues. Our correspondent, Brian Meir, brings us more details in the following report.
The Supreme Court has just reached a majority in upholding last month's decision restoring the political rights to former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. The court ruled that the case had been illegally forum shopped to a district that had no jurisdiction. The fact of the matter is that the 4 alleged crimes that Lula was charged with all took place in the state of São Paulo. They had nothing to do with Curitiba, Paraná State, or the small district court where the Lava Jato operation was located and where Judge Sergio Moro presided. So after the ruling, the Brazilian Attorney General, who's a close ally of President Jair Bolsonaro, who definitely doesn't want to see Lula running for president next year, issued an order requesting that the Supreme Court have a second vote involving all ministers on whether they would uphold the ruling or not. So the vote is in by a far majority. It's mathematically impossible for them to reverse this now. Lula is eligible to run for president, and former internationally heralded anti-corruption czar Sergio Moro is now a suspect in an investigation of felony judicial bias. The Brazilian Supreme Court has just reached a majority in upholding last month's decision restoring the political rights to former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. The court
According to a poll conducted by the Poder's Data Institute, former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva will beat current President Jair Bolsonaro in the 2022 presidential elections with a lead of 18 percentage points. The poll shows the far-right President Jair Bolsonaro will lose in the election in the second round vote against Lula da Silva, with 34% of the vote compared to 52% for Lula. The institute conducted 3,500 interviews between April 12th and 14th to compile the data. The next presidential elections is scheduled for October 2nd, 2022. Haiti saw a new day of protest this Thursday to demand the resignation of President Jovenel Moïse and answers to the ongoing political and social crisis in the country. Civil organizations mobilized in the capital Port-au-Prince and were met with police repression, who fired tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse them. Haitians denounced the authoritarian inclinations of the current government and the support of the international community for the president, who they stress has maintained his grip on power despite the term in office having come to an end. President Moïse has reiterated that he will remain in office until 2022, despite the fact that the judicial branch has determined that his constitutional term expired on February the 7th. In this context, various sectors in Haiti are calling for strike action in rejection of the significant insecurity that the country is experiencing. Through a statement, several religious movements criticized the lack of security in the country. Meanwhile, several social movements have mobilized to denounce the lack of concrete action on the part of the current government to stop the wave of kidnappings and ransom. They stress that the authorities are not doing anything to solve the crisis. In Costa Rica, the president of the National Commission for Risk Prevention and Emergency Care, Alexander Solis, referred to the yellow alert declared by the national government in the face of the intense rains registered in the last hours.
We have had rainfall during the last few hours, practically throughout the Central Valley, the entire Pacific slope, with the exception of some higher cantons in the North Pacific. Because of this situation, we have declared a yellow alert in virtually the entire national territory except some cantons in the North Pacific.
The authorities of St. Vincent and the Grenadines announced that the agricultural region of the northeastern part of the island of St. Vincent was destroyed following the eruptions of the La Soufriere volcano. Deputy Prime Minister Montgomery Daniel visited the area on Sunday, reported to Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves that the devastation reminded him of when Hurricane Thomas grazed the island years ago. He noted that the agriculture sector is now non-existent on the northeastern side of the country and warned that there is not going to be very much food available for the area for a long time. He also said that the primary forest area close to the La Soufriere volcano is all gone, while tree crops like breadfruit, coconuts, mangoes, soursop, plantains, and bananas have been destroyed. On Wednesday, Mexico's lower house of Congress approved reforms to the hydrocarbons law, which allow for the suspension of permits for foreign private companies to import and sell gasoline and other fuels, and also the intervention of facilities that sell stolen or contraband fuel. The initiative is part of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's efforts to strengthen Mexico's sovereignty over the energy market. It reverses past policies that gave transnational corporations advantages over the state-owned company Pemex in terms of fuel distribution and marketing. Permits can now be revoked when imminent danger is foreseen to national security, energy security, or the national economy. President Obrador is committed to fighting speculation as well as large-scale fuel theft and smuggling. The bill passed with 292 votes in favor, 153 against, and 11 abstentions, in spite of the usual threats by foreign companies that they will cut foreign investment and there will be job losses as a result of the implementation. The bill now passes to the Senate. And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away.
Who's moving the chessmen? What interests motivate the actors behind each event? The board is deployed. Critical Move investigates every event from Monday to Friday. Only on TeleSUR. It is our duty to reverse the damage we cause to the planet. Let's recover our natural ecosystems with actions in defense of the environment. Let's keep fighting for a greener world. Wednesdays, only on TeleSUR.
En un mundo en constante movimiento, todos los días se generan nuevos sucesos y es necesario conocerlos. Nos preguntamos, ¿qué hay detrás de cada acontecimiento? ¿Cuáles son las consecuencias y cómo nos afectan? Ante estas preguntas, buscaremos poner el punto en la I.
Dot in the eye. Saturday, only on TeleSUR.
Welcome back to From the South. More news now. Veteran Black Panther political prisoner and journalist Mumia Abu-Jamal, who has been imprisoned in the United States for almost 4 years, was expected to undergo heart surgery this Thursday after being rushed to hospital with chest pains over the weekend. His supporters held an emergency press conference to demand that he be allowed to call his wife and medical consultant, as he has been held incommunicated for the past 4 days. They also demanded that he not be shackled to his bed, as was the case the last time he was hospitalized. Mumia suffers from several pre-existing conditions and became ill with COVID-19 in the Mahoney State Correctional Institution, losing 30 pounds. Mumia Abu Jamal was tried, convicted, and sentenced to death in 1982 for the murder of Philadelphia police officer Daniel Faulkner. For the next 30 years, he was held in isolation on death row. He was kept there for over 10 years, even though a federal judge ordered his death sentence to be overturned in 2001. Mumia remains in prison under a sentence of life without parole. The trial against him failed to meet international standards and was politically biased, taking place in a context that prevented him from receiving an impartial and fair hearing. And also earlier today, we spoke to Dr. Ricardo Alvarez, medical consultant for Mumia Abu Jamal, who told us about his current state of health. Dr. Ricardo Alvarez also explained the context of Mumia Abu Jamal's arrest and the ongoing struggle for his release.
Physically beaten. His head was rammed into a pole. He was brought to the hospital 1/2 hour later. He suffered a gunshot wound which lodged near his spine, through his lungs. And when he got there, there's medical testimony documenting that he was with a medical doctor all the time. There was false testimony of a confession that was remembered 2 months later. So when we look at Mumia's case, this is an example of a level of violence that's occurring through the court system, which is basically rubber stamped a level of corruption. At the time
On Thursday, a top official from the World Health Organization stressed that about 1.6 million new COVID-19 cases are reported each week in Europe, where the death toll has already passed 1 million. According to Dr. Hans Kluge, regional director of the WHO in Europe, the situation remains very serious. He emphasized that the continent must keep up its guard with social distancing and speed up vaccinations as new virus strains drive infections to record levels in some nations. A tally by Johns Hopkins University shows nearly 3 million deaths linked to COVID-19 worldwide, with the United States, Brazil, and Mexico reporting the highest number of fatalities, collectively representing more than 1.1 million. A COVID-19 double mutant variant has been identified in 10 states in India thus far, authorities from the health ministry told local media on Thursday. Scientists described the new double mutation strain as a hybrid of the South African, British, and Brazilian variants of the coronavirus. Experts have noted that it is possible to confirm whether the mutation is responsible for the alarming rise in infections. However, the UK variant has been found in the 80% of people with COVID-19 in Punjab. Officials are also analyzing the role of the double mutants role in the COVID-linked deaths, the severity of infections, preliminary infection, reinfection, and its effects on vaccination. The Norwegian government has decided to postpone making a final decision on the use of the AstraZeneca vaccine, despite a recommendation from the country's Institute of Public Health to withdraw the vaccine from the COVID-19 vaccination program. Due to reports of a combination of rare blood clots and a low count of blood platelets, Norway suspended AstraZeneca vaccination in March. In the meantime, recommendations of the country's top scientists are being followed, while the government has called for further investigation into what impact suspending AstraZeneca will have on public health. The Norwegian news agency NTB reported on Wednesday that the country has nearly 200,000 doses of AstraZeneca with expiration dates in June and July. At the second meeting of ministers of the Ibero-American Summit, the government of Mexico expressed its concern at the irregularities in the distribution of vaccines and drugs against COVID-19 throughout the country.
it is evident that there is a very important asymmetry in the capacity of technological development as well as large-scale production, so that it was an early concern and it is still a concern to share with the rest of the world. So now, we are in a very difficult season. Maybe it does not reach a little more than 5%, but COVAS has been able to do most of the countries that are in this conversation support this multilateral mechanism, but in its absence it has been marginal. So far important, certainly not minimized, but marginal compared to what could be expected.
The Mexican diplomat also proposed to his colleagues to promote joint projects to develop the technological and scientific system in the member countries of the Ibero-American Summit.
Our strategic purpose is to have the necessary development to reduce the dependence that we have at the moment on vaccines and probably later on to associated to vaccines, because access to new technologies is important for the future of medicine. Therefore, our societies would like to take advantage of this situation to underline the importance that we consider in this case we are talking about vaccines, but we could extend them to other fields. The importance that we can make a synergy and have RESUR accelerate becoming an accelerator on an important scale of technological development necessary to ensure our ability to respond to such case phenomena like the one we are now living.
And we have more stories coming up after a final short break, so stay with us.
Innovation, science, the technological breakthrough, and its influence in society.
Viajeros del saber, el futuro está aquí.
Annulment. Monday, only on TeleSUR. Every year, thousands of people leave their homeland to reach new horizons. A reality of those people who struggle for their freedom. Know the diverse causes of those who live between borders. Thursdays, only on TeleSUR.
Welcome back From the South. The United Nations and its aid partners have seen no proof of a declared withdrawal of Eritrean troops from Ethiopia's Tigray region, according to the world body's top humanitarian official, who also warned the situation in the embattled region has deteriorated. The comments by Mark Lodbrok during a closed-door Security Council meeting on Thursday came more than 2 weeks after Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said Eritrea had agreed to withdraw the allied forces it had sent into the northern Ethiopian region during the conflict that broke out there in November 2020. After months of tensions, Abiy sent government forces into Tigray on November the 4th to detain and disarm leaders of the Tigray People's Liberation Front, the then regional ruling party that for decades dominated Ethiopia's politics. Benin's Constitutional Court on Thursday approved the provisional results of the April 11th election, giving President Patrice Talon a landslide re-election victory with 86.3% of the vote. The president addressed the nation, thanking his supporters.
In which the elections took place, the threats, the intoxications that we have known, we have seen, the violence that we have witnessed. In spite of all that, more than half of the voters went to the polls and expressed their choice. This is something that must be underlined and welcomed. We have come a long way, and we will go a long way. Now, Each one of us will have to see the effects of our common effort in his house, in his personal well-being, and this may seem immense, but for me, it will be easy. It will be easy because now we know how to do it.
In Iraq, an explosion shocked a market in East Baghdad on Thursday, killing one person and injuring 12 others. The blast is the second in the Iraqi capital this year. The Baghdad police chief told local media that the explosion was caused by a car bomb. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack. The incident came hours after drone strikes targeted U.S.-led coalition troops near Erbil airport and the Turkish military base in the north of the country. There was no immediate confirmation of any link between the two attacks and no claim of responsibility. Some 20 bomb or rocket attacks have targeted bases housing U.S. soldiers or diplomats in Iraq since the U.S. President Joe Biden took office, while the demand that all foreign troops withdraw from the country is still to be met. A Russian response to the latest United States sanctions is inevitable, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova warned on Thursday as the U.S. ambassador to Moscow, John Sullivan, was summoned to the ministry to be brief. The United States announced economic sanctions against Russia earlier on Thursday and the expulsion of 10 diplomats in retaliation for what was described as an electoral interference, massive cyber attacks, and other hostile activities. Russia has denied all the accusations. The new wave of sanctions came amidst escalating tensions in recent weeks, with Ukraine reinforcing its military presence on its borders with Russia, as well as reports of the deployment of 2 United States warships to the Black Sea, a move which has since been cancelled.
The United States is not ready to come to terms with the objective reality that there is a multipolar world that excludes American hegemony. They are betting on sanctions and interference in our internal affairs. Such aggressive behavior is sure to be firmly countered. A response to sanctions is inevitable. Washington needs to understand that there is a price to pay for the degradation on bilateral relations. The responsibility for what is happening lies entirely with the United States.
Japan's Prime Minister headed to Washington on Thursday to become the first foreign leader to hold face-to-face talks with U.S. President Joe Biden, with concerns about China topping the agenda. Yoshihide Suga will be hoping to renew the alliance with Washington after the Trump era, as well as compare notice on Beijing, as the two nations have become allies in their attacks on China. The trip comes after 2 top U.S. officials visited Japan in March and following the summit of leaders from the Quad Alliance, a group of the United States, Japan, Australia, and India. And the Muslims in the South African township of Winterveld have said they will preach peace during the month of Ramadan. Many Muslim migrants pray at the local mosque of the township, and many of them have fallen victim to the xenophobic attacks that often erupt there. Our correspondent Matuba Mahalte brings us more details in the story.
Ramadan is an important time in the Muslim calendar. Millions of economic migrants will be spending it away from loved ones in foreign countries. South Africa is home to many.
What we do in the masjid, especially in Ramadan, by the way, the masjid, we always try to integrate communities in one way or the other, meaning that we hold meetings whereby we gather the brothers from different countries to come and sit down together and find solutions on different matters. Most of them are business people in this community, so they have your tuck shops and wholesalers. So when a xenophobic attack breaks out, in most cases, this masjid is a refuge for them.
Rahim Nkumane is part of South Africa's fast-growing black Muslims in the country's townships. He says diversity is at the heart of the Umvelingangi Masjid, and migrants feel at home.
Now, coming to the issue of Ramadan, every Ramadan we try to integrate with them as much as we can, because there's one very important element of Islam is that wherever you are in the world, we have a lot of similarities. In fact, we are the same as Muslims, because the way we pray here is the same way they pray in everywhere in the world.
Somali-born Ismail Mohammed Kari goes to the Umvelingangi Masjid for prayer. He's been in South Africa for 11 years and is an established businessman. His business employs locals and it alleviates poverty in a struggling economy.
Do more contribution to our local community. We try our level best to employ locals especially in our area. That is what we can do in our capability.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Economic migrants tend to start new lives and families in their host countries. It's no different for many here. But for those who've just arrived, their place for prayer will also be home, especially now during Ramadan. Matuba Mahlachi, TeleSUR, Winterveld in South Africa.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.